Today, I'll share with you a series of events that ended up affecting a buddy of mine, and maybe we'll learn a little something from it. So it starts with a guy. I'll just call him. We'll call him Johnny, not his real name. And I had met with him twice. Seemed like a decent enough guy. He was a younger expat, came to live out here permanently in the Philippines. At least that was the plan. He was, I think, roughly about 34 years old. Not a bad looking guy, just decided he wanted to try and retire early here in the Philippines. So like I said, I met with him twice and he had a lot of questions. Most of his questions were about how to meet Filipinas and how to date a lot of them. He wasn't here looking for marriage, really. Now, as it turned out, he was friends with one of my friends, so we had a mutual friend between us, who then kept me informed of how things progressed. So what eventually happened was this guy, Johnny, rented out a place next door to my friend. They were each living in a small area, a small barangay, so it wasn't like being in the middle of Manila or Cebu. It was a small provincial area where everybody kind of eventually gets to know everybody and who they know immediately who's new to the area and all that. Now, my friend had already been established and he had a live-in girlfriend on and off, same girlfriend. And Johnny was the newcomer that moved in next door. And right away, Johnny started dating around, but he was dating mainly the local girls who were in the immediate vicinity. And he was essentially doing what I call recreational dating. Now, I don't know how upfront he was with these women. As I've always said, if you're not looking for a relationship, you really got to make that known. The first, second date at the latest. Let a Filipina know, I find you interesting, I like hanging out with you, but I'm not looking for a girlfriend. Always let them know up front. It helps to set the expectations in the proper place. This way you avoid disappointment and drama. But I don't know if he actually took this step, because the next thing you know, he really was pushing the dating on a fast and furious schedule, but this started to catch up with him because eventually these girls who all went to school together and had graduated and lived still in the same area started finding out, oh, you went out with him too, oh, he dumped you and he dated you after you and this and that. So he started getting a bad reputation in the barangay. Now, because Johnny and my friend lived next to each other and often hung out for lunch or met up, Johnny's bad reputation started to bleed over to my friend. And so locals were coming to my friend and essentially saying, hey, you need to tell your friend to chill out. He's creating a whole lot of bad blood around here, and the women are not happy, and there's some broken hearts and angry people. You need to tell him to slow down. And now my buddy did tell him repeatedly, hey, why don't you try dating out in the main town and just kind of keep your local activity here just kind of on the down low and private. But the guy didn't listen and continued, and the drama kept expanding. Well, eventually, Johnny thought it would be a great idea to get involved with a Filipina who was still married. Now, there are some Filipinas who are paper married. Their husband took off a long time ago, maybe even lives on another island, maybe even has a whole other family by now. This was not that type of situation. This was a married Filipina living with her Filipino husband. Yeah, really stupid idea. So then, after a bit of that, apparently the Filipino husband found out and started sending texts to Johnny, telling him to stay away and this and that, the usual stuff. And Johnny didn't leave it alone. So he wanted to get into it with the Filipino husband and decided it would be a good idea to go to one of the local watering holes where the Filipino locals hang out. And he's showing the text to different Filipino guys saying, hey, do you know this guy? he's married to so-and-so, and, I want to know what I can know about him, and fishing around for information. Again, stupid idea number 3, really. Well, of course, the locals got back to the Filipino husband and said, hey, this guy's asking around about you. And that just threw more fuel on the fire. Now, meanwhile, Johnny was so busy having a good time that apparently his finances weren't as solid as they should be. And he ended up going to my buddy, and I believe he borrowed about $500 from him. And then there was, as you can expect, a bit of difficulty paying him back. That created some bad blood with my friend. And meanwhile, my friend is telling Johnny, hey, you really need to chill out your activities, be a bit more discreet, be a bit more upfront, don't be with a married woman. It got to the point where Johnny and my friend essentially stopped talking to each other, which was a good thing for my friend. Now, all of this happened pretty quickly, like within a 6-month period. And by the 7th month or so, Johnny figured out 2 things. Number 1, he figured out he didn't really have the steady income to be staying in the Philippines full time at age 34. The second thing he figured out was if he stuck around in that area, there's a very good chance he was going to run into physical harm from the Filipina's husband. And that's aside from the relatives of all the other Filipinas that he had left a trail of broken hearts with. So he packed up his things and moved back to the United States, likely won't be returning anytime soon. So what can we learn from this aside from the obvious mistakes that Johnny made? What I want to actually focus on is what happened with my friend. You might make a new expat friend, and as I've mentioned before, you want to vet out any new people in your life, whether they're Filipino women or expat men. You don't really want to bring them into your life very close if you've only known them a month or 2. You don't really want them to know where you live. You don't want them to know your full name. And you really want to be a little bit picky about who it is that you're going to be associated with in your area when you're hanging around town. Because let's just face it, people do apply guilt by association. If you're hanging out with a drunkard, people will figure you're a drunkard. If you're hanging out with a guy that's a complete womanizer and maybe even doing sketchy stuff with underage girls, they're going to figure you're doing the same thing. So you really want to be a bit particular about who you hang out with. And don't bring new people into your inner circle right away. Like I said, you want to kind of keep everybody that's new in your life at something of an arm's distance. Because otherwise, next thing you know, this guy that you hardly even know is leaning on you saying, oh man, my life's really going to get complicated unless you can loan me $500. And as happened with my friend, you're just minding your own business. And before you know it, you've got locals coming to you saying, hey, I know your friend with so-and-so. He's kind of a bad apple, so it's your job to talk to him and keep him in line. You don't need that responsibility. So if we can learn anything from this, be choosy about who you hang out with, who you're seen and associated with, and that'll be one step in the right direction to keeping your drama to a minimum.